question is, what if I'm on call on Sunday night and I'm handing over on a Monday and a patient comes into ICU at 5 a.m., as they do on a Monday morning? I have to attend. What items can I charge? So this is a fairly common scenario, and it highlights some of the issues that arise from the discrepancies between how our rostering works and how the item numbers are defined in 24-hour, well, so calendar day periods rather than 24 hours. And often during on-call arrangements, or particularly at handover time, so usually from Sunday to Monday, there can be a situation where you come and attend the patient, but you're not really the intensive care specialist that's looking after the patient for that given calendar day. And this often causes a bit of confusion about who can bill and what. I mean, in terms of the rules, it's fairly straightforward that the ICU management item numbers, so the 13873, the 13870, they're for the daily, so calendar day management of the patient in intensive care, and they can only ever be billed by one intensive care specialist. So this applies if there are people that come in overnight and attend the patient, but you're the one looking after them, you're the only one that can bill this item. It also applies, as we've discussed in the past, to patients that get transferred from other hospitals as well. So even though there are theoretically two intensive care specialists looking after the patient on the same calendar day, only one of them can bill the item. And Medicare doesn't really make a distinction between who that should be, but it expects the intensive care specialists to sort it out amongst themselves. So I guess similar principles apply in terms of the daily management items for somebody that you've come in to see overnight when you're handing over. The usual arrangements are that it's a gentleman's agreement, and usually the person that looks after the patient during the day is the nominal intensive care specialist that will bill the patient for that calendar day. And the person that's coming overnight, well, they don't get to bill the daily management. The questions I often get about this is, well, what else can you bill? And can you bill a consultation? Can you bill another attendance item? Consultations are tricky, and the short answer is that you probably aren't allowed to bill a consultation because the ICU management, daily management item number really defines that item number covers all of the attendances on the patient during that calendar day. So that means any attendance that the intensive care specialist would have made on the patient. So anytime you would have seen that patient, and that includes all the callbacks and after hours reviews, that's all part of that one item number. So just because that role was split up between two people and somebody's been covering the overnight part of it and you're covering the daytime part of it, it doesn't change the rules. It's still part of the same service. So the short answer is that you cannot bill a consultation like that. Probably the only exceptions are you're seeing a patient that's not yet admitted to intensive care. If you're seeing them in emergency department or on the ward and you're involved in resuscitation in a life-threatening emergency, then that's an attendance in a life-threatening emergency outside of the intensive care unit. So you might be able to bill a 160 or a 16123 item based on how much time you spend. You have to be very careful about that as well, because if the emergency takes place in the intensive care unit, then again, that probably falls under what would be considered the normal on-call arrangements for the intensivist that's actually going to bill the daily item numbers. Now, what you can definitely bill is any procedures or interventions that you do or perform. So if you're intubating the patient, if you're putting in central lines, if you're putting in drains, all of those things, they're perfectly legitimate items to claim. I mean, you need to obviously make sure that they get claimed by you, and the intensivist that comes on during the day shouldn't be claiming for those items. Now, what happens with monitoring once you've put in arterial lines and central lines is another question that's up for then discussion between the two people. And again, by convention, it's usually billed by the person that bills the daily item numbers. So even though you've put in the arterial line, the monitoring of the intraarterial pressure is usually something that should be billed by the daytime intensivist. So just to summarize that, the short answer is that attending a patient overnight when you're on call is part of your 13870-873 daily patient management in ICU item numbers. And that can only be billed by one person. So if you've come in overnight, but that item number is going to be billed by another intensivist, then you're not allowed to claim those items or a consultation item. You can definitely bill for procedures. And if you've attended the patient outside of intensive care in an emergency, then you can potentially bill them a 160 or a 16X item number.